Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, namaste, guten morgen, bonjour, ciao, konnichiwa. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Ken at 10. How are you today? I hope you're well. It's Tuesday and we heard all the news about what we can do and what we can't do with a lockdown this week. It's great news, isn't it? Next week we'll be hugging, we'll be in the pubs, the cinemas. What else will we be doing? 6 of us will be indoors and all sorts of good things happening. Most essential businesses can open as well as most general businesses, hotels, B&Bs, the whole lot. So life is getting back to normal. That's good, isn't it? I know some of you will be worried about the re-election of Sadiq Khan and what that means, because I know he's spoken a lot about rent controls. We'll come on to that in a minute. Just go through the general headlines today and just mention how many days, we're doing the countdown to the stamp duty deadline, the end of it, and letting you know how the impact is on the market right now. And today it's 51 days to go, 51 days before the first stamp duty deadline ends. That's the 30th of June. So let's see how that goes. As far as what it means for the market is, most people now accepting, those that aren't already in an agreed sale, that they probably won't make that deadline. You'd have to be a cash buyer. We do have a solution for you if you need to get there quicker. We've got one auction remaining before that date. So if you are in a hurry and you think that your sale can't make it, we can prove otherwise, and we can quite probably sell it, as over 90% of our lots usually get sold at auction. So, high probability of getting your sale through before that deadline if you find yourself in a tricky bind and you need to get your house moved or flat moved as quickly as possible. So on to some industry news today, as usual. As you can see from the background, we'll be talking about Sadiq Khan and rent controls today as well, and what that might mean, the impact on landlords. But first of all, let's look at the news. The Halifax has released the latest house price data, and it's reported that across the UK, house prices are up 8.2% in the last 12 months, increasing at the fastest pace since 2016, with the average selling price at a record of just over 258,000. On a monthly basis, prices increased by 1.4%, or nearly 3,600 between March and April. Russell Galley, the lender's managing director, commented, "The stamp duty holiday continues to add impetus to an extremely active market, magnifying the current shortage of available homes as buyers aim to take advantage of the government scheme." He went on, "The influence of the stamp duty holiday will fade gradually over the coming months as it's tapered out, but low stock levels, low interest rates and continued demand is likely to continue to underpin prices in the market." And that's certainly what we've been saying, that the low stock availability and the fact that sellers have an option as to whether they choose to sell, meaning that supply is limited and there's still confidence in the marketplace, means that we shouldn't see a massive dip after that deadline. But certainly the pressure is building, and believe you me, there are lots of people now involved in sales that we're trying to push past, get through before that deadline, and many people are very anxious. It's not just our clients, but right across the UK. If there's anything that we can help you with on that, do let us know and we'll do our very best. Other things, Cambridgeshire Mayor, 100,000 homes likely to be stopped. This is the new mayor of Cambridge and Peterborough, and he said he's likely to stop on his predecessor's headline policy. Labour's Nick Johnson beat Conservative incumbent on Thursday's local elections. Speaking after his victory, he said it's unlikely that we'll see more £100,000 homes built. He said it was always concerned about the model for building homes for sale at £100,000, and that's because it's not likely to deliver sufficient progress. It's hardly surprising, is it? Apart from that, we get on to the main topic of the day. It's Ask Jay. Every Tuesday, we like to answer a question. And lots of you have been asking us on our rental side, because many of you will know we manage hundreds of properties throughout London. And for that reason, many of our landlords are in a position where they're quite worried about Sadiq Khan being re-elected and his many conversations about rent controls and what he would like to do. So let's clarify. What he would like to do and what he is capable of doing are two entirely different things. Yes, Sadiq Khan would love to introduce rent controls, but guess who he's got to ask in order to do that? The very same Tory government that is underpinning and supporting the housing market right now. So in my view, it's highly unlikely that when he goes to central government and says, "Look at me, I'm re-elected," they'll say, "Oh, congratulations, Sadiq," given that he's a Labour man and it's a Conservative government. Quite the opposite. So I don't see it being likely that he will obtain rent controls here in London. But even if he did, if he took a measure of the last 5 years and he linked rent controls and said, right, rent controls have to go in line with inflation, actually, rents would be higher now than they were 5 years ago. So be careful what you wish for, Sadiq. These kind of things never quite work. And there's an economist that did a short quote on this, and I thought it was quite useful. And this is what he said: if any current or future mayor really wants to reduce rents in London, they could do two things: bang the heads of local authority planning departments to encourage more planning permission, and lobby Westminster to allow local authorities to receive more of the income from the development. A land value tax, for example, would mean any increase in land value when planning permission issued would be retained locally, incentivizing the use of more permits. The Mayor of London has a unique and national and international platform and could serve Londoners better and the rest of the country by pushing for a housing revolution, not fighting for failed economic policies that entrench the problem. And I think that's true. And what he's basically saying in there is that in the end, if you introduce rent controls, then two things happen. First of all, you've got to bear in mind that most landlords are small landlords. We're not talking about rich moguls that are looking to squeeze every penny out. Quite the opposite. In our experience locally, most of our landlords own one property, and many of them rely on the income from that property as a supplement to their own income in retirement, or in fact their whole income in retirement. So any pressure to reduce those rents would have a huge impact on them. And I don't think it would be possible, even if by some strange trick he could possibly introduce rent controls, that they could be introduced at lower levels than they currently are now, because that would cause huge problems with things like people that have already bought and have underpinned their purchase with buy-to-let mortgages. Those things would then possibly be repossessed and so on and so forth. So the likelihood is that they would take the current rental level as the baseline measure. Now, given that rents have dropped massively in central London anyway, people would have been very glad, particularly landlords in central London, if rent controls were in place and linked to inflation over the last few years. And that's why I think it's very unlikely that, whilst it's good rhetoric, and it sounds great, doesn't it? I'm going to introduce rent controls. It sounds like landlord bashing, and everybody loves a bit of landlord bashing, don't they? It's not the most positive policy when it comes to influencing housing, because in the end, we need a strong rental sector. And at the moment, that rental sector is made up of small landlords. And if you disincentivize landlords or scare them away with things like rent controls, what happens is they take that money and invest it elsewhere and not in housing. And in that case, we lose supply of housing. And if we lose supply of housing, then what happens is that we find ourselves in a position where rents are pressed and people get around the rules. There are different countries that have introduced rent controls, and what they found is that landlords, larger landlords particularly, have been doing things like demolishing sites and building much larger developments, and as their new builds are exempt from the controls, subletting where rent controls have an exemption, and doing all sorts of things. And of course, the black market increases as well. So hopefully, well, not even hopefully, I'm very confident that rent controls won't be introduced anytime soon. And if they were, they wouldn't have a detrimental effect on rental levels. In fact, there would have to be some sort of built-in inflation provision. And that inflation provision could mean that rents actually increase ahead of the current market levels. Certainly, if you took that measure at the moment, rents would be way ahead of where they are now over the last 5 years, meaning that the rent control policy that Khan wishes to introduce would have been a total failure and may actually have cost him this election. So interesting to see how that pans out. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, Sadiq. And congratulations on your re-election, sir, by the way. Hope you can come out with some more useful policies in the future. Apart from that, busy day today, lots of valuations. We've got some bits and pieces we've got to do in terms of getting sales through. That's the key thing today. A few maintenance issues coming up as well. Now the pandemic's ended, the builders are back online, and we're able to help people sort out their problems more widely. So how are you today? Hope you're doing well. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, with another Ken at 10. Until then, stay safe, look after your families, and have a fantastic day.